All right, yeah, wow. Boy, that's bad. I'm only going 30, 40 mile an hour, and I can feel the car just it's almost severely vibrating. I know you guys can't. Hey guys, welcome back to The Joy of Wrenching. My name is Les. I'm your friendly neighborhood mechanic. And today in the shop, we've got this 2012-2013 Mazda 3. And the problem that it has is there's a very bad vibration upon acceleration. So when you go to accelerate, you feel wah, 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 wah. And that can be really dangerous. So today I want to show you guys what to check when you have a vibration during acceleration. And let's go through this car as an example. And then also when we figure out what the problem is, I'll show you how to fix it. So come along as we get into it. One of the things that can cause you to have acceleration vibration or vibration in general from the engine drivetrain is the engine motor mounts are designed to isolate the vibrations of this engine, especially as you put it into gear, put it into another gear. But if they are worn out, what will happen is the engine will rock. And it can do that during the torque and wrap up of the axles as well. And so this is one thing that could cause that vibration during acceleration. So I want to look at this engine as I put it into gear going forward and then backwards. And I want you to look at this engine, and what we're looking for is we want to see how much does this engine rock. It should only move, maybe an inch or so in each direction as I put it in forward and reverse. If it has excessive movement, the whole engine goes, boom, boom, something like that. That tells you that your engine mounts are worn out. So let me go in here. I'm going to put it in gear. You guys look at this engine and tell me what kind of movement we see. All right. Hopefully you guys can still hear me good. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put her in reverse first. So I'm power braking. I've just got my foot on the brake. I'm going to put it into gear. And I'm going to give it a little gas with my foot left on the brake. And that engine should be moving a little bit. Just a little bit. Yep. All right. Now I'm going to put it in drive and I'm going to do the same things. Foot still hard on the brake. And I'm going to give it a little blip of the throttle. Foot staying on the brake. You see how that engine moves and kind of lifts up? If it does that more than what you're seeing there, that's an indication that you got bad engine mounts, and that could be contributing to or causing the vibration that you feel while you're driving that vehicle down the road. In this case, we only saw, an inch or two of movement. Really wasn't that excessive. So we're going to go to the next thing and see if what the cause of our vibration is. That could be contributing, that little bit of movement, but it's not excessive. So I don't think that's it. Let's keep going. All right, so we're in the car, obviously, and I got the car on, and I'm going to do the same thing that I just showed you with the engine mounts, but I'm going to feel for excess, let's call it clunkage, as we go into gear. So I'm going to put this thing into reverse, and I'm going to just sort of back up, be safe about things, make sure you're not going to run anything. I'm going to go forward just a little bit, and each time I put it into a gear, I'm just feeling if the engine and drivetrain feels like it's wrapping up and go clunk, 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 clunk. We didn't see that under the hood, so I don't expect to feel it here, but this is just for you guys, just another way that you can quickly check and just feel for where those problems might be. I don't feel that here. Again, we didn't see that with our engine mounts as we rock that engine by power braking it. So we're going to go ahead and take it for a spin and see what it feels like on the road. All right, so here we are on the road. We're on our closed course, and we're testing out what the owner of the car is feeling. So I'm just cruising along here, 10, 15 mile an hour. I don't feel anything just cruising along. It feels nice and smooth like it should. But as I tip into the throttle, and especially as I give it harder throttle, harder acceleration, I'm feeling a wah, 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 sort of a vibration. And it's not a side to side vibration. It's more of an up and down vibration. And so you might think, well, what can cause the front end to be sort of bouncing as I accelerate? And there's a number of things, again, that could be caused. We checked the engine mounts. That wasn't it. The other thing that we could check is the tires. It could be something as simple as your tires are really underinflated or somehow out of round. Maybe they got some flat spots on them. But if it were the tires, you might say, well, I expect that to be vibration at all times and not just whenever I'm accelerating. All right, let's accelerate again. All right, yeah, wow. Boy, that's bad. I'm only going 30, 40 mile an hour, and I can feel the car just it's almost severely vibrating. I know you guys can't really see it very well through the camera. I'm trying to describe it as best I can. But if you've ever experienced it, or if you ever do experience it, where you're having that bad accelerate or bad vibration upon acceleration, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it almost feels like, as it's wobbling, I feel a little bit of side-to-side wobble as well, almost like it's kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like it's kind of walking funny, side to side, wiggling side to side while it's bouncing up and down. So I've got motion in the up and down direction. I've got motion in the side to side direction. And so I want you to think about, as we're going through these diagnoses processes, what could be causing these things. And if it doesn't make sense, move on, right? But now we've experienced it, we've duplicated our concern. Let's go back and let's put this thing in the air and let's check some of those things under the car that could cause this sort of acceleration vibration. Now, one thing I wanted to mention also is the steering. As I'm feeling it, it feels good and tight. I don't feel looseness in the steering. See that? It's springing right back to center. Everything's nice and tight. The wheels aren't wobbling around or anything like that. So I don't suspect that it's a problem in our steering linkage, but we're going to get under the car and we're going to check all these things. So before we go further in our diagnosis, I want you to think again about what we need to look at. We've got an engine mated to a transmission, and then out of that transmission are two axles that come out to the front wheels. This is a front wheel drive car. And then those front wheels are turned by those axles. So if we've got a vibration that happens while we're accelerating, we're applying power to the engine, to the transmission, and it's turning those axles, it's turning those wheels. And so it could be anything in that whole sort of knee bone connected to the ankle bone is connected to the foot bone kind of thing that's going on. And so we're going to start by looking at transmission, CV axles, wheel bearings, and tires. Or in this case, we'll go backwards because it's easier to go from the tire here to the CV axle to the transmission and bearings, all of that. So let's start here with our tires. So what I'm looking at here is I've got some relatively new tires. I've got good tread on these things, nice deep tread, but more importantly, I'm not seeing some weird wear patterns, and I'm not feeling any weird wear patterns. Again, if you've got a vibration, sort of an up and down bouncing, you might expect to see a wear pattern that's kind of like waves on the top of the tire. I don't see that, I don't feel that, so I don't have a tire issue. The next thing that we need to look at is our wheel bearings. The bearings are inside of here, and that's what the axle attaches to our wheel here with. In order to check our wheel bearings, we just take our hands, grab our wheel at 3 and 9, and give it a wiggle. You see, as I'm doing this, I'm turning the whole thing. I'm not feeling any excessive play. I'm also going to grab at 6 and 12, and I'm going to do that same wiggle test, nice and tight. So I'm not feeling any play. If the wheel bearing was bad, we would have like a clunk, 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 clunk. And in this direction as well, clunk, 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 clunk. Don't get me wrong, there's other things that can cause that, but that would be an indicator that our wheel bearing could be a problem. We don't feel that, so we need to move deeper. So we've checked our tires, those are good. We've felt our wheel bearings. We don't feel anything wobbly in the wheel bearing, which is inside of here. The next thing that's connected to this whole system is going to be our CV axles or our drive axles. And a lot of times when these drive axles are bad, you'll see these boots are torn open and all the grease that's inside of here will be slung all over the place. There's a boot here at this outer edge, and there's a boot here at the inner end of that axle. But these are in great shape. There's no tears in them. As we rotate our tire, we'll see that there's no grease slung out, no holes in these things. But what you need to do is you take your hand and grab hold of that thing. And you want to give it a wiggle test. You're trying to see, is there excessive play in this CV axle. And I feel a little clunk, 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 clunk as I move the CV axle a little bit. Let's go to the other side and see that one and see if it's got any play in it as well. So let me get the light back up in here for you. I'll try and keep this out of your eyes there. All right, I'm gonna grab this thing. Oh yeah, I'm really feeling a lot of play. Let me show you back here where the CV axle is coming out of our transmission. Watch up in here. I don't know which way would be probably the best. Right here. That might have, look, come around this side. Let's look up from below. Maybe that's a better vantage point. Can you see through there a little better? Yeah, and what we're gonna look at is this right here. So as I give it a wiggle, you see that movement? You hear that clicky clicky? There's a lot of play in this CV axle on this side. So that right there is kind of suspect. The other thing that's suspect is if you look around here on the bottom of my engine and transmission, all this wet stuff right here, that is leaking transmission fluid, and it's coming out from here, where the CV axle stabs into that transmission and running down all over this place. So this may be our culprit. And so we're going to check that next. All right, so let me show you one more time. So our CV axle here, connecting our transmission to our wheel back here. It got a lot of play in this joint right here. As I move it, see all that movement right there? That's too much play. The other thing is I've got a pretty significant leak of transmission fluid from that axle seal right there. You can see it's still wet. So we're going to go ahead and replace this CV axle and see if that doesn't cure our problem. All right, so we think we've got a suspect here. We've tested our tires are good, our wheel bearings are good. The axles, which was the next thing going towards our transmission, had a lot of play, especially this driver's side axle. And so what I want to do now is I want to replace this driver's side CV axle where I felt the most play. And let's see if when we take it for our test drive, if it doesn't get rid of that darn vibration. So the first step in removing our axles from the vehicle is going to be to remove the axle retaining nut here. It's a 32 millimeter in this case. So get you a really high powered impact like this Ryobi. I'm not sponsored by them, but I do really like this tool, and I'll put a link in the description to it. But we're going to buzz this 32 millimeter nut off of here. Without a high impact or high torque impact, you're going to have a booger of a time getting these things off of there. Now, we want to make sure that this axle can move freely inside of the hub here. You can push on it, and if it's not moving, and if you come around back and grab hold of that axle with your hand and try to move it back and forth and it's not moving, we may have to give it a little persuasion. You see they've got a dimple, a divot in the middle of this. You can put a punch in the center of this thing and push it back, or you can just, if you're lazy like me, take your nut, put it back on till it's flush with the end of the axle, and you've got a big surface here that you can whack on with a hammer. And that's what we're going to do. And all we want to do is we want to move this thing a little bit. So I've got a brass hammer. The reason I've chosen brass is because this isn't going to booger up the steel. And I'm just going to tap it, and I want to see if I can get this thing to start moving. You guys can't probably see it, but it moved just a little bit. Now you can also spray a little bit of penetrating lubricant in here onto these splines. Let me get this out of the way so you can see. But if you look inside of there, see all those splines? If you spray a little lubricant in there, it can also help to make it move just a little bit easier as it goes kind of back and forth. Work it back and forth until that's nice and slick and it just moves back and forth very easily. That way it'll slide out when you're ready for it to do so. All right, now that we've released our axle and it can slide in and out of our splines here, we're going to go ahead and release this pinch bolt here on the lower ball joint. This is a 14 millimeter nut on this side and a 14 millimeter head on the other. So I'm going to hold the back side with a wrench, and then I'm going to buzz off this 14 millimeter nut. There we go. Okay. All right, so now that we've got that lower pinch bolt broke loose, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little persuasion, try and pop it through. You got to remove that bolt completely because it's holding this lower ball joint in place. So I'm going to use my brass hammer again. I've got the nut down flush. And we'll knock it back out through there. Now that we've loosened this up, go ahead and remove our nut there. And we'll see if it'll pop right on through. So I'm going to put a brass punch on here. Again, that's nice and protective. And see, it's not wanting to pop all the way through. So we can put either a wrench on here, or you can put a little small pry bar or whatever, and just get that thing out of there. Now that that bolt is out a little bit, you just get your wrench and kind of come back behind it and kind of pry it out, just like so. And you see there's a lot of corrosion on that thing. We'll clean that up a little bit before we put it back in. Now we can get our lower ball joint separated from our knuckle. That's going to allow this whole knuckle to swing around so that we can get our axle out. Now that we've got this pinch bolt removed, we need to wedge this open just a little bit so that it releases the hold that it's got on this lower ball joint pin. In order to do that, you'll see a gap right through here. And we need to get a chisel and set in that gap, just like so. And then we need to tap on this chisel so that it widens that gap. Now, in order to pull down on this lower control arm, you can get in here and try to wedge underneath your ball joint to knuckle connection here, but it's not really got a good bite. And plus you might damage the boot around your ball joint. So you can attach something to your lower control arm and use your pry tool to then leverage it out. And that's what we're going to do. All right, so now that we've wedged open our pinch bolt area right here, we can grab the lower control arm and pry it down, pull the lower ball joint out of it. You can see that divot that's in the lower ball joint and all of that corrosion in there. This one was a little bit cantankerous. We had to use some penetrating fluid. But notice how I've also got this C-clamp. You could use a exhaust clamp or whatever, but you put that on there. You need a little bit more leverage. There's not any real holes on this one to grab and pull down. They sell these tools if you want, but I just use a C-clamp on there like so. Put your pry bar in it, and then it gives you the leverage to pull the two apart. And you're going to need that. And you might also just tap on it with a hammer to kind of pull it down at the same time. And that really helped us to separate these two. Now that we have our lower ball joint out of our knuckle, you'll see that the knuckle is able to swing around a whole lot more freer. And that's going to allow us to get our CV axle out of the back of our wheel bearing here now. All right, now that we've got everything disconnected, our axle's loose, we've got this knuckle swinging back, we can just go ahead and grab it and pull it out of the back of the, you see, I can pull this out and come look over on this side. I did not have to undo our tie rod end. So the tie rod end is still connected here. And we did not have to undo our sway bar end links either, okay? The only thing that we undid was our lower ball joint. That gives us enough movement, free movement, to move this whole knuckle out far enough to get our CV axle out. Now, we're going to work on the other end where the CV axle is stabbed into the transmission and pop that out. We've undone our other end of our CV axle from the wheel bearing hub assembly. Now it's time to pop the CV axle out of the transmission where it stabs into it. In order to do that, you're going to want to get yourself a pry bar tool of some kind back behind this part of the CV axle and find your point where you can kind of wedge against it. And be careful because there's going to be a little bit of grease that pops out with this. And so once you got a place that you can pop, wedge, you'll feel it kind of pop out. See, did you hear that pop? And look at it, it's moving just a little bit. Here comes the grease, so move your equipment out of the way. Now, come in and look from this angle over here, and I'll show you. I'm going to go ahead and grab that axle, and I'm going to just slide that whole axle out of here now. We've popped it loose from the transmission. Some of that transmission fluid's going to come out as I do this, but I'm just pulling it straight out now that we've popped it loose. Just giving it a wiggle in a pool. And we ought to be able to just slide this thing out of the car. I say that, but it's wanting to hold on a little tight today. Everything's fighting today, isn't it? But that's all right. We'll just give it a little bit more persuasion. We've popped it loose from its little retaining clip, so there's really nothing holding it in place other than a little bit of corrosion and the seals themselves. But let's get back up in there and just give it one more little love pull. There we go. Just a little bit, and that will allow us now to grab hold of it and slide it completely out of the car. There it is. So here's our driver's side CV axle. Let's set it on the ground over here. All right, so let's look at the new versus the old and see if we can feel any differences in it. So I'm going to feel the new one and what it feels like as I'm moving it around here on the outer CV joint, and the one that we just removed out of the car feels fine. Now let's go to this inner one, and it feels like the outer one, nice and tight, no slop, no play, no clicking, nothing like that. But when I pick up the old one, hopefully this will pick it up. You hear that? There is a lot of play in this, and also a little bit of rotational play. You see the amount my hand is moving right there. So that, I think, is going to be our culprit. This is going to be at least a big part of the reason for that vibration upon acceleration. So let's put in the new part. I'm going to clean it up. It looks like there's a little flash rust on it. I'm going to clean it up really good. I'm going to put this new part in there, and let's go out there and test our hypothesis. Okay. All right, so before I put the new CV axle in place, this seal has been leaking, and we're going to go ahead and replace that seal. So I'm going to clean the area a little bit with some brake clean just to get started. Try not to, spray it inside your transmission, but just get some of that old yucky transmission fluid and dirt and stuff out of our way. Also helps us to see that seal better, to be able to pop that thing out of there and put a new one in place. And even though this seal is not torn, you can see that it's been leaking. One thing I do notice is that the spring on this seal is exposed here. So that means that the seal itself, the little spring, and I'll show you that as we pop it out, has failed. I'm just going to use this tool here. I just happen to have a little trim tool. It doesn't take very much pressure to remove the old seal. And there she goes. And as you can see, it's still intact, but the spring that's supposed to be here fell out. Now notice it's also leaking a little bit more transmission fluid. You see how dark and dirty that fluid is? If you see yours is that dirty, it's probably a good indication that it's time to change it. All right, so I found the spring. It had actually fallen up in here and underneath this plastic shield. But basically, this spring is supposed to be on the inside of the seal, like so, and was already kind of popping off of there. Now, it may have been that way because I just removed the CV axle, but it may have also somehow kind of worked its way free a little bit and been the cause. As you can see, once it starts moving, it can be a cause of a leak past that seal. So we're going to replace this seal with a new one, and it'll have a new spring and everything. Clean this area up real well. So here's our new seal versus our old seal. And so we're just going to compare these two real quick. They are the same diameter and about the same height, although the old seal's umbrella extends just a little further than the new seal. This is a 2000N part number, 2007N as in Nancy, and they're very commonly found at the local parts house. In order to install it in place here, we're going to set it in its bore, which I've cleaned with a rag nice and clean, and then we're going to use our old seal, set that on top of it, and that's going to protect that umbrella. And we're going to tap that old seal with a little something to protect it as we mash it in flush. All right, so let me just tap this thing home here. Got the old seal as our installer. Little dead blow, kind of tapping around the edge. Again, you just want to get this flush with the mating surface of the transmission. Need to get this lower corner down here just a little bit more. Sorry, you're in the way, I'm in the way, everybody's in the way, and everything's fighting us a little bit today, but we're getting there. We'll get her done. A little bit more and we'll have it home. All right, so we're ready to go in with our new part here. I've cleaned up the mating surfaces, put a little bit of lubrication on these, and we'll go ahead and slide this in place just the opposite of how we got it out. So we'll come in through here, and we'll angle our splines into our new seal, which also has a little bit of grease lubricant on it. And you want to make sure you go in that real nice and straight, or else you'll tear that new seal. And we're going to go in there and rotate the CV axle just a little bit until we feel that it's engaging with the splines inside the transmission. So I feel that now. All right. And you can also turn it, and if it's engaged, you'll see the other wheel turn. All right. Now that we've got it sort of stabbed in, we need to give it that final love tap to get it to go all the way home. So I'm going to orient it up here like this, and I'm going to get my dead blow hammer, which is a rubber mallet, basically. I'm going to keep this as straight as possible, and I'm going to tap it with my dead blow hammer. Rotate it a little bit. If it's not going to snap in, I'm pushing in while I'm tapping on this thing, and I'm checking to see if it has popped in place. And it has not yet. So we're going to rotate it just a little bit more, and I'm going to tap it some more. Oh, I don't know if you guys heard that, but it made a different sound. Look back here, come under here, look under there. You see that? We close that gap. So now the CV axle is in place, and it has clipped in place inside of the splines of that transmission. And the way you can make sure that you're in place, again, just grab it and rotate it. You ought to be able to rotate your transmission, and the other wheel will turn as well. Now we can take off the nut on the outside here. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more grease, lubrication on these splines so that it'll slide nice and easy back into our hub. All right. Now I've got a little bit of lubrication on the splines of our new CV axle. It's stabbed into the transmission. I can just pull our knuckle back, point the splines and the snout into the back of the hub, rotate it just a little bit, and it'll engage with the splines, and then it'll slide through, and you'll know you're in the right place when you see it protrude through all the way on this side. Let me show you how it kind of slides back and forth. If it's only sticking out that much, you're not all the way there. You'll hear that satisfying pop as it gets to the full extent. Now that it's in there, we can put our new nut in place just to hold it there so it doesn't slide back out. And the new CV axle came with this new nut that fits it. And we'll tighten that up here in a second. Next, now that the CV axle is in place, we need to put our lower ball joint back into the bottom of the knuckle. Now we can put our lower ball joint, which this is a good time to check it, make sure it's nice and stiff. It's not flopping around or got any kind of wiggle play in it. This one feels good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to try and stab it back into that pinch bolt hole there. So just line the two up. You might need to push in on your knuckle a little bit while you're pushing up on the lower ball joint to get them to line up. Now you see it's starting to go in there, but because it was such a tight fit, there was a lot of corrosion there, I'm going to have to give it a little persuasion again, a little love tap on the bottom with my rubber mallet to get that to go back in. So let's do that. Okay. Now, it's going in there. Let me get rid of this C-clamp. We're not quite there yet. This lower ball joint isn't quite in place all the way. And you'll know it's in place all the way when you got that little divot that's in that pin lined up in this hole here so that the bolt can go through it. So I'm going to continue to give it a few love taps until it goes all the way home, seats up there. And I'm looking in that hole every so often to see if there's still any kind of bit of that pin visible through that hole. If you can still see that pin through that hole, your bolt's not going to go back through it. Now we've got it all the way back up in there. I'm looking through this hole and I don't see any evidence of that pin still in the way of my bolt. So I can get my bolt and try it and push it through that hole and it should slide right back through there. I'm noticing that I've got a little bit of corrosion on this bolt, so I'm going to clean this bolt and I'll be right back. Now I've got my bolt cleaned up and I'm able to slide it back in. Still a tight fit, but it's going through there. Let me get a better thing to tap it in place. I've got a brass punch somewhere around here. We'll use that to get it to go all the way through. There we go. Okay, now our retaining bolt is back in place. We get our nut and we can set that back in place here. And you can put a little bit of Loctite on this if you'd like. That'll keep it from backing off. And this is a 14 millimeter, and we'll tighten these up to 50 foot-pounds. All right, so now that our lower pinch bolt is holding the lower control arm and ball joint back in place, the next thing we need to do is tighten up our axle nut, and that's a 32 millimeter, and it gets tightened to 200 foot-pounds. So we'll go ahead and snug it up as best we can here with the impact, and then we'll put it on the ground to get that 200 foot-pounds. Now that we've got the car down on the ground, we can use a crowbar to keep in between a couple of wheel lugs, keep it from rotating while we torque our retaining nut to 200 foot-pounds. And then we need to make sure that that can't back off. And the way that we do that is if you look real close on the end of the axle, you'll see there's a little notch. And we're going to take one of our punches or a chisel, and we're going to bend this portion of our nut into that little notch, and that will make sure that this nut can't back off. All right, so let's go ahead and peen this over a little bit. So again, just get you a chisel or a punch and set it right there on the nut at the notch. Give it a couple of love taps and you'll see that it bends it into there. Now that can't rotate itself loose. All right, so it is dark now. We started this here in the evening. It's been an hour and a half or so, I guess, of working on this thing. We've only replaced the driver's side CV axle because it's the only one that really had any kind of play that I could really feel. And so let's see now by driving it if our vibration that we felt upon the acceleration is gone or not. So here we are on our closed course again, and we're just going to go up just like before at about 20-30 mile an hour, and then give it a little acceleration and see how she feels. So hold your fingers, say a little prayer, whatever you want to do, because I am hoping that we saved our customer some money and just can get away with this one repair. All right, so I'm doing about 20 mile an hour on our closed course here, and I'm gonna give it the beans. All right, hey, nice smooth acceleration. Wow. All right, I'm going to slow back down here. Oh, man, I am ecstatic. We got it, guys. Hey, this is awesome. So as I showed you, we went through the process. We pinpointed an issue, and just repairing that one CV axle, the inner CV axle joint, had just a little bit of play, and that was enough to give us that dramatic vibration upon acceleration, and it's gone now. So I'm happy. Let's go. All right, guys, so it's a little dark. Hopefully you guys can see me. I got the lights on out here. As you can see, we went through the process, and hopefully you appreciated that, going through that diagnostic process step by step to make sure that the issue that we have, we find something that we know is going to help, if not repair it. In this case, we got lucky, and it was needing only one CV axle. As I showed you, that inner CV joint just had a little bit of play. This car has 160,000 miles. That was the original CV axle. So if you've got one of these Mazda 3s or whatever that's starting to get up there in miles and you're feeling that acceleration vibration, check those CV axles and see if they got any play in them. And if it does, replace that thing, because in this case, as you saw, it cured the issue completely. And I'm amazed. It was only a little bit of wiggleness, a little bit of play in that CV axle, and it really translated to a dramatic vibration upon acceleration. So thank you for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate your time. If this helped you in some way, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us to reach a greater audience. And you never know, there might be one owner of a car, doesn't even have to be a Mazda. Any car that's got a problem with that vibration on acceleration, check the things that I talked about. You may find that it's a CV axle and not something, you know, drastic like a whole new transmission or something that somebody might say you need. Thank you guys for your time. Have a wonderful week, and God bless.